Yeah, I was Jess left me this morning, or last night, and went to in Indiana, I think, and she didn't take the kids. Like, what am I supposed to do? And so I planned on getting up extra early and making sure, I got everybody ready to go and diapers packed, and I was getting Parker up. And if you ever went bowling, you might have known Parker got really sick on Friday, and so we were calling the doctors and stuff on Friday, and so he'd been a lot better, and whatever he had, exited him this morning as I was home alone with them. And so, it was to the point where, I had him in his high chair, and I just undid his diaper in the high chair. Our parents are with me here, and I just lifted him out of his diaper and set him in the sink. I set him in the sink and just pulled like a Full House, you know what I mean, and just sprayed him down, and left the diaper still sitting in the high chair. I put it in a room with a closed door, and I will get to it when I get home. It was not on my list of things I had to do that morning, so that is something I get home. But if you've been with us the last couple of weeks, we're doing this Do Something thing, and so if you've ordered a T-shirt, I don't know why I didn't get them in, but you didn't get one. And this is the second wash. This is the second wash I think this one's been through, and they're already fading. So that's 3 more weeks. I think I got to wear this thing. I'm gonna count it down every week. So in the first week, we got to talk about the promise of God. Right, that promise that He's given us that we're going to do amazing things. In John chapter 14, verse 12, He says, "I tell you the truth, anyone who has faith in me will do what I have been doing. And he will do even greater things than these because I'm going to the Father." And so we decided that God has a plan for all of us. And He's got something that we all are supposed to be doing, and we're not here just for mediocrity. Right, we're not here just to get by, just to get from point A to point B, but to live that dash, like we talked about a couple months ago, and be who we're supposed to be and do great things for God, even greater things, He said. And so last week we kind of got into that plan a little bit, and we found out that we are God's masterpiece, and that He's been preparing us for something our entire lives, and we are exactly who we need to be to do the thing that He's prepared us to do. And that verse was Ephesians 2. "For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." And so this week, will everyone say God has a plan? God has a plan. You guys sound convinced. And everyone say, so say it again, God has a plan. God has a plan. There, that is so much better. And so God's got a plan. And what we're going to talk about today is kind of the question that I think we've all kind of asked at some point. And it's something that, and I do this a little differently, because normally when I'm preaching, we kind of get a big section of Scripture and kind of walk through it a little bit. But there's so much. Jesus spent so much time discussing this topic. He spent His whole life here living out this topic, that we can't there's not just one place I wanted to stay today. So we're going to be jumping around and going to some different scriptures. But the question is one that kind of keeps us from being okay with where we're at. The thing that keeps us kind of hunting for something to do. Or some of us, you'll hop from job to job because we're just not sure what we're doing. And so the question that we're going to ask, the question that today is about, is we find it in Mark chapter 12. And there are some teachers of the law that would come to Jesus, and they would always try to stump Him and get Him to mix up His words and prove Him wrong. And they asked Him this. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating, and noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked Him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" Isn't that the question you're asking? Maybe not, right? Which is the last rule I should break? Right? Is kind of the question. And that's not so much the question that we're asking, but we have to take it a little bit deeper. That question of what's your greatest commandment. The question underneath the question is, what does God desire most from me? That's the real question. What is it that God has for me? What am I supposed to do? Where am I going? How, it's that idea of purpose. What is my purpose? And you're talking about Rick Warren. I mean, millions of books have been sold on that alone, purpose. And it's the thing that we just hunt for and we long for, and it's the thing that might be able to fulfill us, our purpose. And so everyone's been asking. It's been the question that's been asked for centuries. And Jesus, he answers the question by quoting the Old Testament, which wasn't the Old Testament when he said it, but it's Old Testament to us. So Deuteronomy 6, he said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength." And then just jump to Colossians with me. He says, God, Jesus, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him. And so the bottom line, Jesus says, your purpose, the thing God desires most, is your love. We were created for him. We were created to love him. And so that seems easy, because it's almost not really a tangible thing. Do you love God? Yeah. Okay, well, you're good. No, that's not really how it works, right? It's not just this, like, how do you love God? I mean, because that's kind of the underlying question. Because has anyone ever asked you, do you love God? And it's kind of a, yeah, I do. That's just kind of our answer. Where do we go with it? But how then do we love God? How do we show him our love? And there's a story in John that Jesus had been risen from the grave, and he was making his rounds, appearing to his disciples and to other people, and the disciples were out fishing. And I don't know if you know anything about disciples, they're not good fishermen, right? If you remember when Jesus first met them, they were out fishing all day, couldn't catch a thing, and so here they are again, they go out fishing, and they're out all night, and they catch nothing. And so Jesus, he's on the shore, and verse 7 says, "Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, 'It is the Lord.'" All right, so what happened was they were out fishing, they didn't catch anything, and Jesus yelled from the shore. He said, "No, throw your nets on the other side of the boat." And they threw their nets on the other side of the boat, and they put up so many fish that the nets would tear. And so they immediately knew it's the Lord. And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say it's the Lord, he wrapped his outer garments around him and jumped into the water. And the other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. And when they landed, they saw a fire burning, coals there with fish on it and some bread. And Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you just caught." And jump to verse 15. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?" The question takes on it's a little bit different when Jesus is asking it of us, right? It's different if I ask you, do you love Jesus? It's easy to say yes. But when Jesus asks us, he can look right into our soul, right into our heart. And so there's that question. And of course, what's he answer? Yes, Lord. You know that I love you. You can see it. And Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." And the third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him that third time, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." There's a direct correlation between loving God and serving others. It's the purpose. It's the reason that we're here. And so we just can't separate the two. You can't just love God and not love others and not serve others. And that's why Jesus, after he tells that teacher of the law that just to love God is the greatest commandment, he follows it up with something, right? He follows it up and he jumps to Leviticus 19. He says, do not seek revenge or bear grudge against one of your people. And then he says this, he says, but love your neighbor as yourself.